welcome aboard. Dragon, SpaceX, comm check, ground stations.
SpaceX Dragon, we're go for launch. Let's light this candle.
3, 2, 1. Ignition. Liftoff of the Falcon 9 and Crew Dragon. Go NASA, go SpaceX, Godspeed, bottom dog.
On behalf of the entire launch team, thanks for flying with Falcon 9 today. We hope you enjoyed the ride and wish you a great mission.
We would like to welcome you aboard Capsule Endeavour.
We do have a friend on board with us, Trimmer, the Apatosaurus. I think I was requested to do a backflip.
Good night, Megan and Theo. And Karen and Jack.
MD Houston flight. Houston is go for undocking and departure.
Dragon is committed to undock.
SpaceX Dragon on Dragon to ground. We are ready for the systems brief.
Copy. As stated, Dragon's in a healthy state. We are proceeding toward the primary landing site, and your timeline is current. Visual, 2 drogues out.
200 meters. We are braced for splashdown.
Copy, brace for splashdown. Endeavour, on behalf of the SpaceX and NASA teams, welcome back to planet Earth, and thanks for flying SpaceX.
It's a humbling experience to be a part of what was accomplished.
It's great to see how excited everybody was. We hope it brings a little bit of brightness to a pretty tough 2020.
I'm Victor Glover, NASA astronaut and pilot for the NASA Crew-1 mission to the International Space Station. My role in the Crew-1 mission is to first safely get us to the space station. We are flying a new spacecraft, the Crew Dragon, made by SpaceX. And once we get to the space station, as a member of the expedition, we'll be conducting research, lots of scientific experiments, some of them ongoing, some of them that we'll bring up with us, and also to do spacewalks, robotic operations, outreach events, and the maintenance and upkeep of our International Space Station. That's fantastic. Crew-1 is the designator for the first operational mission of the SpaceX Crew Dragon. So it's a new vehicle, and so Crew-1 is the first Crew Dragon fully operational mission. And so that's the crew, the 4 of us that are going to the space station, similar to a Soyuz crew with 2 or 3 folks on board that become the other half of an expedition. So we'll also be a part of the expedition on the International Space Station. Crew-1 consists of Mike Hopkins, Shannon Walker, and Soichi Noguchi and myself, and together we represent NASA's Crew-1 mission to the International Space Station. You know, it's a great honor, first and foremost, and looking at all their experience, it makes me, one, comfortable that there's so much experience and so many ways that I can learn from them. But also it motivates me to be ready and able to do my job and to take care of my responsibilities, because you know, I know that I can ask them a question and they'll be able to help me learn or do anything that we need to do on the station. But at the same time, I want to be ready and able to contribute. And so it's just great to have so much experience there to the left and the right. I am surrounded by love and support, and it's humbling and overwhelming sometimes. My mother and father are so excited about this mission. I'm actually amazed at how much my father keeps up with what's going on the space station. He'll often clue me into something. Oh, I didn't realize that was happening this week, because I was busy off training. And so I'm excited that they're so excited. My grandparents are excited about being here, and that really means a lot to me. My grandfather was in the Air Force during the Korean conflict, and so to be able to know he's going to be there and watch us launch, and to see the progress of our mission, really it warms my heart. And then my wife and kids, the support and love they give to not just me and the crew, but to each other, knowing that they're going to have to take care of each other while we're on the space station. And then the fact that it takes thousands of people all over the world to get us ready. Our operational and technical and language instructors, our crew secretaries and admin and logistics support. There's just this team, this worldwide team that it takes to get us ready, and we're representatives of them. And so again, it's humbling and overwhelming, and I want to do my best because I represent them, but I am surrounded by love and support. No, we are getting ready to fly a new spacecraft to the International Space Station for 6 months. And that is a mouthful. It may sound like, hey, it's a nice soundbite, but it took so much. We've been working with our partner SpaceX for years to develop this spacecraft and the capability to fly it and operate it safely. We've been running the space station for 2 decades, keeping it habitable and keeping it running, improving the capability to do science there, which requires upkeep. It's not brand new. And so to be able to fly a new spacecraft to our home of almost 2 decades in low Earth orbit is just an amazing accomplishment, and we are the next wave. We've had human beings in low Earth orbit in November of this year, on November 2nd. That is the 20-year anniversary of human presence in low Earth orbit, continuous human presence. And so we will be that next chapter, that continuation of continuous human presence in low Earth orbit, and that is an amazing responsibility and privilege. Oh, what does family mean? Family is it's the foundation of all of this. It's the reason that I can do what I'm doing now. And so, having been in the Navy for 22 years, it's definitely been a family adventure. My wife is amazing. She's a superhero, in my opinion. I've deployed several times in the Navy on an aircraft carrier, and we had kids every time, a different amount of kids each time. But she has been an amazing mother and support for me as well. And so, again, knowing that they're going to be there to support me, and that we'll be in touch, able to email and call and video chat, but then also that they're so important to supporting each other through this. And also having fun with it. I mean, we're going to make it fun as well. We've got some games and some books that we're going to read or to play together while I'm in space, instead of just having a phone call where, hey, how was your day? How was your day? We're going to try to do some unique things with that time that we have, since it's so unique. But I think my family is excited, and that's exciting for me because my goal in this entire endeavor was to make sure that it continued to be a family adventure, that they look back on this time with fondness and not as that, hey, that was that stressful period where Dad was gone a lot and then he left for 6 months. And so I really want them to enjoy this and to dig into to feel their role in it was so important, which it is. So true. I think the overriding thing that I've got going on right now is just focus, the importance of focus. There are a lot of things that want to steal our attention, and so from the very beginning, a little over 2 years ago, when we knew this was coming, I had a talk with my family and told them that NASA's going to get me ready to fly in space. My job is to get them ready, and I've tried really hard to stick to that. And right now, that is even more so my focus as we finish these last months of training. So just trying to stay focused. I think we've all, our crew, Mike Hopkins, Shannon Walker, and Soichi Noguchi, and myself, I think we've done the training and we've done well gelling and working together. And so now just making sure that we're doing the right things. There's a lot of discussions and things going on and traveling amidst these the pandemic and keeping our families safe. And so, like I said, a lot of things to distract you, and it's just important to make sure that we're still getting the right things done.
No doubt.
And so my family, I try hard not to burden them with a whole lot of work when I come home. I like to engage in the things that they're doing as well. But at the same time, I want them to appreciate what's going on. Like these last few months, I've been doing a lot of science, and I try to take pictures and document what I'm doing so that I can send them pictures and share with them what some of the contraptions that I have to wear around, and thermal imaging pictures I've taken recently, which look pretty cool. But so I think they're excited, but they also realize that there's still quite a long way to go. Dad's got a lot of travel and a lot of training to do between now and then. But they are looking forward to eventually getting out to Kennedy Space Center and watching a launch and seeing all of this kind of come to fruition, something that we've been working really hard on. And then being able to be in touch, them understanding that we have the ability to communicate via teleconference technology, and that I can make a phone call and call any of them on their cell phones or on the home phone is important. So they understand that we'll be in contact for the 6 months that I am up there as well. So they're excited. We've been doing this for a long time though, so they also realize that there's still quite a bit of time before we launch, and just trying to, again, make sure that in these last few months we're focused and doing the right thing so that we get to launch and we're all ready to go, and that stress is at a minimum.
Probably part of the goal as well, right?
Oh, absolutely. My oldest kid is 17. She just finished her junior year in high school. And so, our launch date is going to be right around just after school starts. So just after the beginning of her senior year. And then my landing date will be, sometime hopefully before spring break, but before the graduation, which is important. So that's kind of in terms of schedule, you don't want to put schedule pressure on yourself. The spacecraft and rocket will be ready to launch when it's ready to launch. But every day we delay, that's what I'm thinking about, is it's one day closer to my kid's graduation. And so I would love to be here for it, but we've had a talk, and I told her if I have to, watch from space, that would be pretty cool too. It'll be memories, something for us to talk about later. But yeah, it's definitely important to be there for the family, because they're going to spend so much time working with NASA to be there for us. Demo 2 and Crew-1, first of all, Demo 2 has to happen and be successful for Crew-1 to be able to get off the ground. And so their mission is going to be a major part of certifying this vehicle for continued use to the space station. So that is key. But there will be some differences. From the outside, it will look very similar. One of the major differences is we will be a full expedition complement, so about a 6-month stay on the space station. And our vehicle has a few differences, improvements that SpaceX has made in the way that they make these vehicles. And so again, from the outside, it will look very similar, but on the inside, a few differences. But our crew complement, once we get up there, Bob and Doug, 2 people made up the Demo 2 crew. Our crew is 4. That's all the seats in the Crew Dragon, and that brings up the ability to more efficiently and effectively conduct spacewalks, robotic operations, and all those other things that we talked about, the science, the outreach. And so again, we will bring a full crew complement. We will have a 6 to 7 person crew on board the International Space Station, and then because of Demo 2, we will be able to continuously provide crews to and from the space station safely from Kennedy Space Center. The goals of the Crew-1 mission. We want to get our Crew Dragon spacecraft to the space station and home safely. Flying the spaceship is one piece, and 2 very important phases that will be separated by 6 months. But in between, there's also the very important mission of being on the International Space Station. We will conduct spacewalks to upgrade and keep the space station flying and healthy. We will do maintenance inside to keep the space station running. We will use that orbiting laboratory to conduct science, or really to do the hands-on part of the science experiments that happen on space station in conjunction with our principal investigators on the ground. And we will also conduct outreach events to talk to people all over the world about the amazing things that are going on in low Earth orbit, and hopefully supporting our trips beyond low Earth orbit. And so our goal is to provide trained crew for a 6-month expedition to again continue that human presence in low Earth orbit.
Fantastic.
At a very high level, when I got assigned, my wife and I were actually on vacation, and we had some time to just talk. There's just the 2 of us about what this meant for our family and what it meant for us individually. And so I came up with, I guess, 3 perspectives or goal priorities. And so one was to keep things simple, and to keep things flexible, and to keep stress low. And so I think that is what puts me in the best position to be ready no matter what, how things change, or if they don't change, to do my job in that environment. But it also helps my family to handle what's coming. Given that this is the first time that we're all doing this, if we heap a bunch of expectations onto it and things don't go according to expectation, that creates stress. And so for us, it's keeping it really simple. asking lots of questions to our experienced crewmates and their families, and to the trainers, and to each other, and not assuming that we know what's coming, and just making sure that we are on the same page as we learn more. So keeping it simple, flexible, and low stress. That's been my overriding goal. I was selected to be a part of the 2013 astronaut candidate class, and we showed up at Johnson Space Center in August of 2013.
That's awesome.
I was sitting at my desk in the Russell Senate office building when I worked for John McCain, and I got a phone call from a Houston phone number, and I grabbed my cell phone, I ran out in the hallway, and by the time I answered, I missed it. And so I called back, and after a lot of waiting and being transferred, I was transferred to Janet Kavandi, who was the chair of our board, and she asked me if I wanted to come to Houston and commence training, and that was awesome. And so it was unreal, standing in the Senate office building in that rotunda by the statues, all the marble. It was amazing. So I tell John McCain, I go into his office, and I tell him, I've got good news and I've got some bad news, sir. And he says, let me guess, you're gonna go be an astronaut, right? And I was like, yes, sir, which means I gotta leave early. And so that was the good news and the bad news. And it turns out he had actually found out from one of the Kelly brothers, because he was the Arizona senator, and they were back in Arizona, and they had received the list beforehand. And so I thought I was gonna go in and surprise him with it, but that actually wound up being a really good conversation. And one of the things he said to me then was, he said, you help America get our spacecraft capability to launch our American astronauts from American soil. You help NASA do that. And so it's really a special honor and a privilege to be a part of the commercial crew program doing just that. We graduated from astronaut candidate training on July 8th of 2015, and that date is significant for a couple of reasons. It was the day we got our pins. We got our astronaut pins on July 8th, 2015, which is the same day the New Horizons spacecraft had completed its billions of miles journey to Pluto to take high-resolution images of the surface of Pluto, and that was the first day we got a picture taken. So a pretty special day. Why did I become an astronaut? Wow, that goes way back. So high school, athlete, loved being a part of a small high-performing team, wrestling and football. Definitely wanted to play sports in college. Went to college, was fortunate to wrestle in college while pursuing my engineering education. And so that experience impacted what I thought I wanted to do as a professional. I really enjoyed engineering academically, but I wasn't sure I was ready to just work on design. I wanted to use those designs, and so being an operator and being out doing things was important to me. My experience in athletics was important to me, and I wanted to stay a part of small, high-performing teams. And so I come across one of my mentors in his Navy Reserve uniform, and the idea of joining the Navy had popped up, and I actually originally wanted to be a Navy SEAL. I mean, small, high-performing teams, check. And so that's what started my journey in the Navy, and I wound up deciding to go into aviation and learn to fly. And so the love of flying, if I haven't made that clear, the love of flying and being a part of a small, very specialized, high-performing team that gets to do things in really interesting and challenging environments, and the astronaut corps is the epitome of that. So yeah, I was lucky. I threw my hat in the ring, and they happened to need a person with my skill set.
That's brilliant. What's your favorite?
My favorite aircraft to fly is the F-18 Hornet.
There you go.
Okay, graduated from college and went to Officers Candidate School and was commissioned in 1999. Went from there to flight school and got my wings in 2001. And I finished flight training and went to learn to fly the F-18 in San Diego, actually in a Marine squadron at Miramar. And I finished F-18 training in early 2003 and showed up to my first fleet squadron in 2003. And I was in Virginia Beach from 2003 to 2006, where I deployed in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom in the summer of 2004. And from that tour, when that was completed, I went to test pilot school, and I actually did an exchange program and went to the Air Force test pilot school, even though I'm a naval aviator, and I was able to learn about test flying in Southern California. And then I went right up the road to a small outpost in the desert we call China Lake Naval Air Weapons Station, and I was a weapons and systems test pilot for 2 years. And then from there I got to go to school full-time. They call it the Air Command and Staff College, and so, or we call it War College for short. And I was able to pursue formal education for a year full-time before going back to the fleet and flying operations based out of Japan. And then from there I went to Washington, D.C. and was on a staff job working in Congress, and I was fortunate, really honored and lucky to work for the late Senator John McCain, a naval aviator himself, former naval aviator. And then I was in that job when I was selected to be an astronaut. Training for your first mission. Well, there's the basic competencies, I guess, flying T-38s, the high-performance jet flying that we do, the NBL training, the diving in the full pressure suit, the space suit, to train for spacewalks, robotics training, International Space Station systems, specifically the emergency procedures training, that really ramps up. And then there's a bunch of science and payloads, of which sometimes we are the principal thing that's being investigated. And also our foreign language training. I'm still taking Russian classes to understand the language and culture of my Russian cosmonaut colleagues. But then there's also this really interesting slice of learning to fly the Crew Dragon. And so we actually travel out to SpaceX in Hawthorne, and they have a training team that's helping us to learn the systems and operations and, again, emergency procedures that you need to know to safely fly the Crew Dragon into space. Wow, this is a test pilot's dream to be able to, in any way, contribute to NASA developing a new spacecraft, or one of our partners developing a new spacecraft. And so it's just been amazing to work with them and help to improve procedures and training, to learn about the vehicle, and to just spend time getting to know their flight control team and their trainers. And I'm really looking forward to working with them up to launch and then even while we're on orbit. But it's really been an honor and a privilege. This is, I think, what a lot of the folks that go to test pilot school dream of doing. There aren't many opportunities to work on a new spacecraft. The first flights of the space shuttle were a little over 30 years ago, and so it's just really amazing to be able to be here at this timing to get to work on a new spacecraft, and so it's just been an amazing opportunity. When I first started going out to SpaceX, when you walk in the front door, there's a conference room right off to the side, and it's really interesting because there are usually 40 laptops in there open, and there may only be like 20 people. There are more computers in there than people. But it's interesting because you can always tell the NASA folks from the SpaceX folks. Essentially, anyone not wearing a t-shirt is NASA, and all the folks in t-shirts are the SpaceX folks. So there's definitely a culture difference, and that's where I would say the most interesting dynamics have happened. We have learned a lot from them. They have learned a lot from us. And learning to fly this vehicle, not just inside in a tactical operational sense, but in a big picture organizational culture sense, we have learned a lot from them, and they've learned from us. And I would say that it's creating sort of a new culture that is some kind of a balance between the two. And they have made us better, and I think we have made them better. Oh, wow. You wake up and you have a meal, you get handed over to the SpaceX team, and SpaceX is running the show until you come back and are recovered and given back over to NASA to fly you back to Johnson Space Center. So when SpaceX takes over, they get you suited up, and you leak check your space suits, and they get you out to the launch pad. You saw them driving out in the Model X's. And that was really neat. And they take you out to the elevators there, get you up into the crew access arm, and help you get strapped into the vehicle. And there are some procedures to run through. And you're talking to the core, which is their version of similar to Capcom, the person that's speaking to the folks in the capsule. And that person is actually in Hawthorne. And so you're talking to them as you run through the procedures, and they're coordinating with the flight control team there in Hawthorne, with the folks at Launch Control at Kennedy Space Center, and also with the folks in Houston when you get to that point. And you go through some procedures on the way up to launch. And then the team that helps straps you in, they get you all buttoned up and they close the hatch, and then they move out of the way. And when everyone else is far away from the vehicle at a safe distance, that's actually when they fuel up the vehicle. And that is one of the booster, the Falcon 9. And that's probably the most unique thing about this system, is that they fuel it up with the crew sitting there. And so we have a system, the launch escape system, which we had a test a really amazing test back in January. And they fuel the rocket up as you're sitting there, and the fueling finishes not long before liftoff, and then and you saw the rest after that. And they lit the candle and sent Bob and Doug skyward. My overriding thought when I envision us getting to that point is, don't screw up. I mean, you know, we have responsibilities, things that we're watching, and then some things that we will be doing, interacting with the vehicle, and making sure that we understand what the vehicle's doing, what it's expected to do, and what it's actually doing. And so trying to stay focused on those tasks when, again, everything I do at that point will be the first time I've done it. Actually, that's true for all of us. None of us will have flown this vehicle before. And so I think trying to, one, appreciate the magic and the accomplishment that it is to get to the first operational mission of the Dragon, but to also make sure that we're focused on our responsibilities and flying it safely. And then once we've done that safely, I think we can look back on it and appreciate that. But so trying to balance that, enjoying and living in the moment, but also managing the responsibilities to make sure that we get to space, to low Earth orbit safely. I'm looking forward to that juxtaposition of emotion, I think. There are windows that would be down kind of near our feet. And so our screens are up high, and I just envision at some point being able to like take a look down and to see the Earth from a perspective that I've never seen. I've been to 64,000 feet. That's the highest up I've ever been above the ground. And so to get to a point beyond that and then be able to look down at the Earth, that'll be a little special moment. But then I'll still have responsibilities, and to look back up at that display and make sure that we're on timeline. It'll be an interesting tension to manage. That's true, and it's extra true nowadays with the dawn of this new capability. There's been a lot of uncertainty in terms of schedule, and so it's been difficult to nail down when exactly we would be there. So they can't give us the exact science or the exact set of EVAs, the spacewalks that we're going to do. And so we go with the basic building block approach. Just like when you're training for a sport, there are basic things that you do in addition to the skills of that sport, swinging a golf club or whatever. You still want to have flexibility and mobility. And so we work on spacewalking, T-38 flying, which is decision judgment as well as the hand and eye coordination skills, the foreign language training, the technical training, and the emergency procedures training on space station, and the robotics. So we are trained to do whatever set of missions that the space station program needs us to accomplish, research to outreach. And once we get there, they will also be able to do something that I think is really amazing. And now that we have this pandemic and we've had to actually do more virtual training, it's really dusted off or increased our use of these virtual and computer-based training systems, virtual reality and computer-based training systems. And so when we get to the space station, there will also be things that they will give us just in time or on the job training for, and they'll be able to help us prepare for a specific spacecraft coming up that we're going to have to grapple with the robotic arm, or for a spacewalk to install this really unique piece of hardware onto the outside of the space station. So the ability to also train while we're in space is actually phenomenal. And being in this pandemic response, posture, we're actually having to do a lot of that kind of training nowadays to minimize in-person contact. And so it's actually a really neat preparation for being on the space station.
This is an opportunity.
There's so many people that I could name. My father, Victor Glover, my mother, Cynthia, my grandparents, William and Loretta, my wife, Deanna, my daughters, Genesis, Maya, Joya, and Corinne. And there are thousands of other people that I would like to name, my trainers, my instructors, my colleagues, my crewmates at NASA, all our international partners, and the cosmonauts. all of you are a part of this mission, and we carry you with us, and it makes us want to do our best because we represent you. So thank you for your support and for your love, and know that you're flying with us on Crew-1.
Be involved in a mission like this?
You know, it doesn't matter what you want to do. One of the most important things to your ability to achieve success is your understanding and definition of what success is. And so I think some things that are just universal are the things that I tell young folks when I go out and speak, but I think it applies to us older folks as well, and I try to live these myself. And so number one is to be gritty, G-R-I-T-T-Y, to be gritty. It means not quitting. Don't give up in the face of a challenge. And the greatest challenges you'll ever experience are from within. And if you can control these challenges, external challenges are no big deal. So number one, be gritty. Number two, be a lifelong learner. Learning inside and outside the classroom, learn to computer program, learn a foreign language, and once you learn one thing, master something, learn to play an instrument. Climb down that mountain and go ascend another mountain, and before long you've amassed so many skills that your skill set might actually make you successful, but your ability to acquire skills is the thing that really is going to be so valuable to you in the future. So be gritty, be a lifelong learner, and the last one is to be a good teammate. That's hard though, because you don't get to determine if you're doing a good job. It's the people to your left and your right. But that's why it's even more important for us to focus on that, because it takes the focus off of yourself. So be gritty, be a lifelong learner, and be a good teammate. I don't care what you want to do, you'll be good at it.
I am Dr. Shannon Walker, NASA astronaut, and I am getting ready to fly on the Crew-1 mission to the International Space Station. Crew-1 is the first, what we're terming, operational mission of the Crew Dragon vehicle to the International Space Station. And what we mean by operational mission is that we are starting the phase where we are flying astronauts, NASA is flying astronauts to the International Space Station on commercial crew vehicles. The Crew-1 mission is following what is termed the Demo 2 mission, which was a test flight of the Dragon crew vehicle. One thing that's very different about our flight versus Doug and Bob's is we'll have 4 people. How do 4 people live and operate on such a vehicle? And then, of course, the main mission is to deliver crew to the International Space Station for our long job to start, spending 6 months living and working on the space station. So my role for my upcoming flight is sort of broken into 2 pieces. There's my role on the Crew Dragon, and there's my role on the International Space Station. On the Crew Dragon, I am one of the mission specialists, and so a lot of my job, I think, is to help people understand how you operate on that spacecraft with 4 people as opposed to just 2 people like Doug and Bob flew. How you allocate the various tasks that need to be done that make sense and can get things done efficiently with 4 people in a small space. On the space station, my role is going to be very much like it was last time. Do what the ground needs us to do, whether it's maintenance or experiments, and just execute the task at hand. Well, I think what's interesting about spacecraft generically is that underneath it all, spacecraft are spacecraft. They're all the same in the fact that they've got tanks, fuel, engines, how they produce electricity, and then the details come out in how crew interact with them, what kind of information is presented to the crew, what the crew's allowed to do in terms of troubleshooting, what the ground is going to do. And so what the Dragon spacecraft represents to me is just a continuing evolution of better computing power that's evolved over the years, and different ways that the crew can interact with the spacecraft. Yes, I spent 6 months on the station previously in 2010, and I am so looking forward to getting back there and having another 6 months on the space station. It is so exciting to live and work on board the space station, do all the science that we get to do, to look down on the Earth and just take in the wonders of the Earth and the universe. When I was there last time, I did a whole variety of tasks. It was at the very end of the construction of the space station, so we did a lot of maintenance and getting the station ready to do all the science that we're doing now. And so I think that's one of the main differences. It's going to be between my last flight and this flight, it'll be more science, hopefully less maintenance, and before it was more maintenance, less science. Well, I have spent my entire career at the Johnson Space Center. I actually started out as a flight controller working in the Space Shuttle program. I worked with the robotics side, so I was in charge of deploying and retrieving satellites with the Space Shuttle. After that, I moved over into working with the Space Station program, working to get hardware built for the space station and working with our international partners to get hardware built for the space station. One particular notable time I had in that time was I got the opportunity to spend a year in Russia working with our Russian counterparts doing avionics integration, which was really interesting, really neat experience. Following that, I went back to the control center, but I had a very different job there. I worked with and eventually ran the group that was responsible for the technical health of the space station. And when you say technical health, I know people sometimes wonder what that means. I think the best analogy is we were the problem solvers when things went wrong. If you've seen the movie Apollo 13, when they said you need to take a round one of these to fit a square one of those, that's kind of what we did on a day-to-day basis. Yes, I always wanted to be an astronaut. I was about 4 years, yes, I just turned 4 when we first landed on the moon. And I have very distinct memory of my parents taking me and my older sister out into the backyard, and the moon was rising over our house, and they pointed up there and said, "We have people there." And even at 4, I thought that just sounded like the best idea ever. Yeah, it was kind of difficult growing up because even though I knew I wanted to be an astronaut, I didn't know what it took to become an astronaut. And so I knew that I needed to do well in school, sort of basic things like that, but it wasn't really until I got quite a bit older then I realized that I actually did or would have the qualifications to be an astronaut. I think one of the main things is to believe in yourself, because most people have a lot more capability than they give themselves credit for. And so when I realized that I had seen a new class of astronauts that had been hired for the space shuttle, and I was reading in the newspaper what their qualifications were, and just going through some of them, I realized I can do that. And that was a big turning point from not understanding what it took to be an astronaut to really that day sitting on the couch knowing, yes, I can do that. No, as a kid, I was always interested in math and science. And I honestly, aside from not knowing how to be an astronaut, I knew it wasn't something I could do immediately. So I didn't know which path I wanted my career to take. And I figured physics was a nice generic field in some sense that I could go any direction after I graduated from school. I think it had, growing up in Houston, had a huge impact on my life because the Human Spaceflight Center, the Johnson Space Center, was here. It was in my backyard, and so it always had a presence there. I remember coming out as a kid and taking a tour and things like that, so it was always there and inspiring to me. Oh, my time in Russia was so interesting and so fascinating. What I look back on is the personal connections that I had with my fellow engineers and colleagues over there. What I have found being part of the International Space Station program, and not just Russia, but our colleagues in Japan and Europe and Canada, is that underneath it all, we all have the same goals and we all have the same passions. And people are just driven to accomplish this joint goal that we have together. Well, my husband is a former astronaut, so he knows very well what it takes to go into space, since he flew on the space shuttle 4 times and spent 4+ months on the Mir space station. So I would say my family's probably a little bit different in that regard because we're both very in tune of everything that's going on. I was assigned quite late to this mission, and so my training time has been much, much shorter than the rest of my crewmates. Yes, I was not expecting the call to be assigned, and so anytime you get a flight assignment, it's tremendously exciting. It is a big change. My ground duty within the astronaut office was being as part of the leadership team in the astronaut office, so I was more of a management type, and then all of a sudden, Friday I was a manager, Monday I was a crew in training, and so it's a huge shift in how your day goes.
So you're training for this flight?
Well, there are a few differences in training between training on the Soyuz flight and training for the Crew Dragon flight. One, on the Soyuz, I was trained as the pilot on that spacecraft, and so I had a lot more hands-on flying the spacecraft training. I'm not the pilot on this particular flight, so I do not have to train for those duties. And the other big difference is now the training is in English, and before it was in the Russian language. Yeah, it's very interesting. My first flight, the training flow was 3 years, and now I'm getting about 5 months. And so I have a lot of experience to fall back on, but we've done very abbreviated training courses on something. So in many ways, my training days have been a lot longer and a lot more intense than my fellow crewmates are going through right now. SpaceX is a very interesting company. There are so many young people. I always imagine it to be like it was in the early Apollo days at NASA, with so many young engineers so passionate about what they are doing. But also in many ways, having trained in spacecraft and for spaceflight all over the world, training is training, and it's all about the same. You start off with theoretical work, and then you move into the practical inside your spacecraft. Oh, I'm looking forward to being on station, living and working there, and just spending time with my crewmates on the station. There's so many things that make living on the space station special. You are in a pretty small environment, although the station is quite large by many respects, but you're with a set group of people for a long period of time, and so you really get to know each other so much better than you have been able to on the ground. We're already a family, but then as so many people can relate to, being in one place with your family for extended periods of time is just different. There are so many things that you could do on station. What I like about it is every day really is different. You get up and you do something different, and you may be doing a biological experiment one day, you may be doing maintenance on equipment the next day, and then the day following that you'll be doing some sort of experiment in chemistry. And so just being able to participate in so many different things I find exciting. I get asked a lot whether or not I'm afraid. I'm not afraid, I'm very excited, but the reasons that I'm not afraid is because I know the people involved, I know the engineers who are doing the design work, I know the managers that are making the decisions to say, yes, we are ready to go. And so knowing all of that and keeping up with the decisions being made is how I prepare to go to spaceflight. Yes, I have a lot of confidence in the spacecraft Falcon 9 rocket as well as the Crew Dragon vehicle. The Falcon 9 over its iterations has flown more than 80 times in space, and so it is a very solid rocket to fly on. The Crew Dragon vehicle actually has a pretty long history, even though we've only flown one with people. It started off from early days as being iterated from the cargo vehicles. We've had cargo Dragon vehicles go to the space station multiple times. And so even though this is early in the Crew Dragon flights, it's actually both pieces, the rocket and the spacecraft, have a pretty extensive history. Space exploration is important for a number of reasons. It is important for humanity in terms of the science and engineering benefits it brings. It is important for understanding the universe and our place in it. And I think it's important for the world to work together on common goals. 20 years of collaboration on the International Space Station. Well, 20 years of having people on the International Space Station. Of course, the collaboration started many years ahead of that. It is fantastic. It is a constant in people's lives. I think it is just tremendously exciting and fascinating to know that kids are growing up today that have always had people living in space and always had the countries working together for science and engineering objectives. So 20 years down, hopefully many, many more years in the future. What I get to see from the station is I get to see the Earth as a whole. You get to see how something that's going on one place of the Earth really does have effects all the way around the other side. Some of it is just the human side of what's going on the ground, our environment, and then a lot of it just has to do with how incredibly fragile our atmosphere is, and that's what gives us life, and that's what we need to protect as humans, to protect our home planet.
Hi, I'm Colonel Mike Hopkins, United States Air Force and NASA astronaut. I will be the commander on NASA and SpaceX's Crew-1 mission to the International Space Station. Yeah, so we are part of the Crew-1 mission, and that means we are going up on the Crew Dragon, the SpaceX Crew Dragon vehicle, going to launch to the International Space Station and spend a full long-duration mission up there. That we're following the DM-2 mission, which just recently landed, and one of the things that has to happen before we can go up is we have to actually look at the data from their mission. Bob and Doug did a test mission, and so that's really where they're verifying that the requirements of the vehicle are met. And then when we go up, we're actually going to put it through its operational paces. We're going to have a full crew of 4 instead of just 2. We're going to stay up for a long duration, so that means 6 to 7 months versus the 3 to 4 months that Bob stayed up. So that's basically, in a nutshell, what we're going to be doing. It's a standard ISS mission, except we just happen to be flying on a brand new vehicle. So my role on the Crew Dragon itself as part of Crew-1 is the commander of the vehicle. And so essentially from all of this training that we've been going through, launch, rendezvous, docking with the space station, I'm the commander of that particular vehicle. When we get on space station, I just become another member of the ISS crew. And at that point, I'll be doing all of the standard roles that you would expect any crew member that's on ISS to perform, whether it be maintenance, whether it be science, whether it be doing spacewalks or robotics operations or anything of that nature. While I'm there, though, the whole time I am still responsible for the Crew-1 vehicle and making sure that it's always ready to bring us home if we have to. And then at the end of our mission, our stay on ISS, I'll command the vehicle and bring us back home and land, and then at that point it's all done. Well, actually, it's not all done. Believe it or not, once you get back from the mission, you have a long post-flight period. You've got to go through, again, some additional experiments, testing, collection of data on you, a lot of reviews, a lot of debriefs on how the vehicle performs. So really when we land, the mission isn't actually over. We actually spend another about 6 months or so going through the post-flight period. You know, sitting on the launch pad is definitely a moment that you're always thinking about, right? That's one of the more critical phases of the flight, as you can imagine. And so you're very focused in, right? It can be a very emotional time because you're getting ready. You're sitting on top of a rocket that's that's got hundreds of thousands of pounds of fuel on it. That's getting ready to launch you into space. And so as you can imagine, that can be very emotional. But at the same time, you have a job to do, and you've got procedures to follow. And so you get very focused in on that to make sure you're monitoring all of the systems and making sure everything is going the way the plan has been laid out. And so, you know, when that launch, that moment is probably one of those that you think about a lot. Because it's hard, believe it or not, and I've been to space, but it's hard to imagine yourself up in low Earth orbit, up floating. And so I think what I can get my head around right now is the launch phase, right? Knowing that that's going to happen. And then once you get on orbit, you're kind of pinching yourself because it's hard to believe that you're finally there. So this is, so every vehicle typically has a patch made that represents that crew, that represents that vehicle. And so this is our Crew-1 patch. And so this is for the NASA SpaceX Crew Dragon vehicle. And you'll notice a lot of times you'll have names of the crew members that are on this on the patch, but we elected not to have our names on it, and part of that is because it's not just about the astronauts that are on board, but it's about the entire team at NASA and SpaceX that it's taken to launch this Crew-1 vehicle. The other thing I'd like to point out on, and it's kind of hard to see, and I'm not sure if you'll be able to see it in the camera view, but along the bottom there are the symbols for all of the previous U.S. launch vehicles. So Mercury, Gemini, Apollo, Space Shuttle, and that's flowing into the SpaceX NASA Crew Dragon, and then all of that going up to the International Space Station. So very excited about our patch, the Crew-1 patch, and it was a lot of fun to help design it, and it's even more fun now to be able to wear it. Yeah, so getting to watch the DM2 mission has been pretty amazing. We were in one of the flight control rooms during the launch itself, and I have to admit the first time when they started to fuel that rocket with Bob and Doug in the actual vehicle, you know, this is the first time this has ever happened. And that was a little bit surreal. And after so many months and years of working on this vehicle, to actually be in that moment where you were getting ready to launch them into space was kind of exciting. It was very exciting, actually. And so you definitely had a bunch of goosebumps as you're watching that all take place. And then, you know, they get to the International Space Station, and the docking and everything goes so smoothly, which is very exciting to see that what you have planned actually transpires that way. And then once they got on board, you know, they've done a lot of work to kind of test out the vehicle, if you will, to check how we're going to pack the vehicle, how we're going to have it, what configuration we're going to have it in while it's docked to the International Space Station. They've been going through all of that process, or they've gone through all of that process, and so it's really been helpful for us to see that happen. And then, of course, the landing and recovery and all of those, which is just as important as the launch and docking. And so to see all of that take place has just been fantastic. Wow, how do you mentally prepare for a space flight? I think you just try and keep it all in perspective. Fortunately, I've got my wife and kids help me do that. But you go through the day-to-day training, the day-to-day operations to get ready for it. And so in that case, sometimes you're not always thinking about that big picture of I'm going to space. You really focus on how does this system operate? When I take this exam next week, what do I need to study to get ready for it? And so you get kind of caught in the moment of that particular system or that particular training that you're going through. And so from a mental preparation, you don't necessarily have to think about it right away, right? You've got time. And I kind of, it's funny, I go back to my days at the University of Illinois when I was playing football, And there's a lot of similarities, believe it or not, between playing sports like that and doing something like this where you're launching into space. You spend players, whether it's football or any sport, volleyball or basketball or you name it, you spend months and years training and practicing for that moment when you get on the field, when you take the court, and when you walk out to the launch pad to that rocket. And so there's a lot of similarities between those events, and so that mental preparation, if you will, that I went through during my days on the football field, I find that applies now as I'm getting ready for spaceflight. I guess for me, the dream of becoming an astronaut goes back to the early days of the space shuttle program. I was in high school, and so at that time, they used to show the launches and the missions live in the schools, and you could go into the gymnasium and they'd have a TV up there and you could watch it all take place. And so that's when I really started thinking about becoming an astronaut. And it's funny, a lot of times people think of the dream of being an astronaut as something that a kid would have. And I remember when my wife and I first started dating at the University of Illinois, and I told her that I wanted to be an astronaut, she laughed at me and kind of said, "Are you serious?" But at the same time, she stuck with me throughout the years, and as I went through multiple applications to try and become an astronaut, and after 13 years of trying, and to have that dream come true is pretty amazing. I think the amazing thing about once you become an astronaut is you realize that there's a lot of people that would make amazing astronauts, that would be fantastic astronauts. It just so happens that I was in the right place at the right time, answered the questions in the right way during the interview, whatever it was. But quite frankly, I think I got lucky. But what does it take to be an astronaut? Well, it certainly is going to take a lot of hard work. It's going to take a lot of dedication, and it's going to take a lot of passion, right? One of the things that we always talk to people about that are interested in being an astronaut, and a lot of times you'll get that question about, what should I do? What should I study? What kind of job should I get to become an astronaut? And the most important thing is you got to be passionate about whatever it is you do, because if you're passionate about that, it's going to come through, and we're going to see that, and we know you're going to bring that same type of passion to the astronaut corps. And so I think that's a big part of it, is do what you love, and if the astronaut, if becoming an astronaut works out, then all the better. So believe it or not, I've been at NASA now for almost 11 years. And so, of course, your first job when you come in is you're an astronaut candidate, which means you're just going through the basic training program. You're learning how to be an astronaut. Then I was very fortunate and I got signed right away, so I was now an assigned crew member, which meant I went through the training flow for an actual mission to the International Space Station. Once I got back from the International Space Station, I've had a variety of roles within the office. One of the primary has been as a capsule communicator, the CAPCOM. And so I've been the CAPCOM for just standard day-to-day ISS operations. I've been the lead CAPCOM for spacewalks. I've been the lead CAPCOM for the commercial crew program. And so that's been a really interesting job, because as we've been developing and bringing these new vehicles to operations, you've got to be a part of that whole process, the procedures, how are we going to communicate with the crews, and what's the right information to give the crews through all phases of flight. And so serving as a CAPCOM within the office has definitely been a highlight, because you're right there. It's really almost one of the next best things to being in space, is because you're right involved in all of the operations. So I got to walk through the moment of getting the call of being assigned. I have to go back in time a little bit, and that is getting the call that you've been selected. So let's start there. And so when you go through the interview process for becoming an astronaut, at the time anyway, you knew you were going to get, if you got an interview, you knew you were going to get a call. and it just depended on who called you, of whether you were going to be selected or whether they were going to tell you, thank you, and but we aren't going to select you at this time. And so you're waiting for that call. And I sit there and I think about how important, how big a deal it was when that call finally came in. And yet, I thought that was the biggest moment of my life. But then, when the chief of the astronaut office calls you in to their office and they tell you that they want to assign you to an actual space flight, it's kind of like, oh wow, I mean, they actually mean to send me to space. And so that moment was even bigger, believe it or not. And because, before that, it still seems a little bit like a dream. And then when they finally assign you to a mission and your name goes next to an expedition number and has a launch date and things of that nature, it starts to get a lot more real. And that's when it really starts to get exciting. For the second mission, I had been working as the lead Capcom for the commercial crew program, and for both vehicles, for both the Boeing Starliner and for the SpaceX Crew Dragon. And so we knew there was going to be an announcement, and there was going to be multiple crew members that were going to be involved in it. And of course, there was that initial cadre that included Bob and Doug and Sonny and Eric Bowe. And so we knew that they were going to be a part of that initial cadre. So you weren't quite sure whether, I thought there was a reasonable chance that I was going to be a part, but then you're going through this guessing game of, well, do I think I'm going to be on one of the Boeing vehicles? Do I think I'm going to be on the SpaceX vehicle? And so when you get the call, it's the same, right? It's the same as it was the first time, is just as exciting, and just as exciting to know that I was on the SpaceX vehicle, was going to get to do something new and exciting and a new vehicle. And so each one, the first time I got assigned, the second time I got assigned, was special and unique, and it still just gives me goosebumps. It's funny, when I got that call, and I knew I was going to be assigned, there was still a lot of work that I was doing as that lead Capcom for the commercial crew program. And so you have this idea that maybe I can continue to do some of that work while I'm assigned, because you never like to leave things undone, right? You never like to leave things not complete. And so I had this idea that I was going to be able to continue working as that role while I started my training and things of that nature. And you quickly realize that there's just not enough hours in the day. And so I would say that was probably one of the biggest differences, the biggest changes that happened when, the day after, or the week after, or 2 weeks after, was just realizing how much work there was that it was going to take to be now an assigned crew member, and the realization that I wasn't going to be able to continue some of my other duties that I had been doing. And so once you get to that realization, then you get focused 100% on getting ready for the next mission. Yeah, my family means everything to me. It is the most important part of my life. God and family, and so quite frankly, if I didn't have an opportunity to fly again into space, I'm okay, because I've got my family. My wife Julie has known I wanted to be an astronaut from the time we first started dating back in my college days, which is quite a few years ago. But she's been a part of it from almost the beginning, and so getting to share this journey with her, and also our kids has made it extra special, right? It's the icing on top of the cake, and so without family, it just wouldn't be as meaningful. Yeah, one of the things that's different is my sons are older, and so the first time I launched, they were in, I guess, high school and junior high. And so it was pretty easy at that point. They're still living in the house, and so when they traveled over to Russia and then on to Kazakhstan for the launch, they're doing it as as a family and all together, and from a logistics standpoint, it was pretty simple. This next time is going to be a little more challenging. Both my sons are at college. One, my older one, at the University of Michigan. Ryan is there, and Lucas is at the University of Notre Dame. And so that's going to add a whole new dimension to how do we make this launch, being at the launch and things of that nature work out. But at the same time, however it works out, it may not be exactly the same as what we were able to do last time. I may not be able to have the same kind of contact with them that I had the last time. But I also know that they're very supportive of what I do, and so even though I may not be able to have some of that direct contact, at least I know they're there with me.
Will you just speak to that?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? Life does go on for the families that are at home, and what you forget oftentimes is the additional stress that they're under because of their spouse being on board the International Space Station. And just to kind of give you a sense of what I mean by that, and kind of the understanding of what that stress can be like, when we are launching and landing, we have opportunities for the family, like for the landing, the families can be in mission control and viewing that, and we always have an astronaut that is there with them, just to kind of explain what's going on. And during the landing phase, there's always this period where we have a comm blackout, and that can be anywhere from 3, 4, 5 minutes long. And so after I had landed, I was actually in an MCC with the families for one of the astronauts that was getting ready to return. And I never appreciated how stressful it could be until we got to that time of the comm blackout. And you're sitting there with the families, and you just you can sense it, you can feel it, because there's this period where you've been hearing the comm coming between the crew and mission control, and then all of a sudden there's this silence, and you don't know if everything is all right, and you can't say everything is all right because you don't know, and you're just waiting until that comm comes back. And there's this moment in time where mission control will start calling in the blind. We call it calling in the blind, and so they'll start calling the capsule, just waiting for a response, and then there's no response, and I just can't. It's so hard to describe what it is like for the families to have to sit there and wait through those moments until they hear their loved ones again on the space to ground comms. There are so many strengths. Julie is just an incredible person. This career field that I'm in, whether it's been in the Air Force or here as an astronaut, can be challenging for families, and throughout it all, she has been amazingly flexible, amazingly, she just goes with wherever the Air Force or NASA sends me, whatever challenges, she just takes them on, and she does it with grace, and she does it amazingly well, and so I can't say enough. I wouldn't be able to do this job without her. So ever since we were assigned as the Crew-1, we've been going out to SpaceX at their headquarters in Hawthorne and working with them from a training standpoint as well as from a development and verification and testing standpoint. And so it's been an amazing relationship. They bring a lot to the table. NASA brings a lot to the table. We've got a ton of experience in human spaceflight. They are very innovative. They think about things in a different way. And so when you bring those strengths together, a lot of their innovation and a lot of our experience with the human spaceflight, and you bring those together, it's been an amazing team, and we've seen the results of that with the DM2 mission. Yeah, the partnership that we have right now with SpaceX, with Boeing, it's pretty powerful, again, because it brings the talents of those companies with the talents of NASA, and it enables us to continue having access to low Earth orbit, human access to low Earth orbit, and at the same time it's allowing NASA to further its reach, to look beyond low Earth orbit and really be able to focus on going back to the moon, focus on going to Mars. And that really would be much more difficult if we didn't have these unique partnerships, unique relationships like we do with SpaceX. You know, it is interesting. I mean, it is a contractual relationship, right? I mean, NASA has gone out and we have signed a contract with SpaceX to take astronauts to the International Space Station. And so there's that piece of the relationship that I mean, it's just reality. And so you can't ever forget that piece, but at the same time, when you're out there on a day-to-day basis and you're interacting with their engineers and you're interacting with their trainers and you're interacting with the people that are actually building the rockets and building the capsule itself, now you get to kind of go beyond the contractual piece and you really get to establish the relationships, the personal relationships. And that's been extremely powerful. I mean, one of the things that I've really enjoyed about this relationship with SpaceX or working with SpaceX is, you know, we get to go on the floor and we get to meet the guy that's building or that is welding together your spacecraft. And I think that's good for both of us, right? Because we get to meet him, we get to see the work that he's doing and understand how critical that work is for our safety and for the success of the mission. He gets to meet us and we get to share thoughts and stories and all of that. And so just that personal connection has been such I think a powerful thing for this program, and it's really paid huge dividends. So again, I think that the relationship between NASA and our commercial providers is going to stay strong. I think it's going to continue to be successful. But what's really going to be interesting is when they start to branch out and start taking folks into space that aren't NASA astronauts. And I think that's really where, you know, so you're going to have two things that are going to happen, right? NASA is going to start launching missions to the moon as part of the Artemis program, and it'll be very interesting to see if some of these commercial providers start launching, let's say, civilian astronauts, if you will, into low Earth orbits as a byproduct of this programs that we've had with NASA. And so I think that's going to be a very exciting time when SpaceX launches their first commercial astronaut. You know, it's funny, ever since I got here as an astronaut and went into that initial training as an astronaut candidate, my kids, my wife have said, "You don't go to work anymore, do you?" It's like you go and just play all day, and that's what it feels like when you come here to JSC and you get to train. And it's much more serious than that, right? I mean, it's not playing a game. It is real. It has real consequences. But at the same time, you know, I just absolutely love it. You know, we've got a couple of facilities here that are incredible. We have what we call Building 9, where we have the mock-up of the space station inside. And so we do a lot of our training for spaceflight in there, where you get to, you know, see the actual layout, the real dimensions of what it's like inside the space station, what the hardware is actually like. And so that is very helpful. One of the other things we do in that facility is kind of the last bit of training that we get to do as an entire crew, and we go through the emergency scenarios. And so they'll put the full crew inside the mock-up of the space station, and we'll go through a fire scenario, and they'll actually pump some smoke into it, and we have to react just like we were expected to react when we're on board the space station. And so it's the training here is very realistic. You know, obviously we can't get rid of gravity. Even when we do things like practice our spacewalks in the Neutral Buoyancy Laboratory, the NBL, you still have the effects of gravity, but we do as good a job as you can. And quite frankly, based on my first space flight, we do an amazing job actually of simulating what it's really like up in space. Yeah, the VR capabilities are just getting better and better and better, and it's not just Yeah, it is the VR. So we've got a dome where we're actually able to practice robotic operations. And so it's like we're looking outside the cupola, the big window that's on the bottom of the space station, and we're operating the robotic arm as we're capturing one of our supply vehicles that comes up. And it's amazing. It's very realistic, if you will. We also have an opportunity in a VR, we call it a VR lab, and we put on the goggles, and now we're out on a spacewalk. And now you can simulate things like what happens if we are to actually come off of station. We don't really have a way of practicing that in the NBL. We certainly don't want to practice it up in space when you're out on a real spacewalk. And so we do it with the VR, and you practice that situation of something happened, you've come off a station, and now you've got to use your SAFER, which is a system that allows, basically it's a little jetpack that you wear with you when you go out on spacewalks. And we practice getting back to the station, and so you definitely want to get that right. Yeah, we also have opportunity to fly in the T-38, a two-seat jet trainer, and NASA's been flying here at JSC. We've been flying those jets for a lot of years now, and it's the one thing that we get to train in that's real. Right, where the consequences are real. When we're in a simulator, if we mess up, if we don't make the right decisions, we just reset the simulator and we try it again. In the T-38, you have to be on your game, and so it is kind of interesting when you do head out to Ellington Field, where we fly the T-38s out of, and when you get into the briefing room, you got to go through a mental switch and say, okay, I've got to be on my game. It's got to be all about flying the T-38. I got to stop worrying about my robotics class that I just took, or my test that I've got tomorrow. I need to focus in on flying this T-38 because, again, the consequences are real.
Training in
general. I think the importance of training, I'll fall back onto, I can go back to playing football, how important the training is. I can go back to my first space flight, how important the training is. The amazing thing, and I'll tie all of those actually together when I went out on my first spacewalk. And I remember being inside the airlock, and you're looking out this hatch through the vacuum of space down at the Earth going by. And I realized that it's a place that I've been before, sort of, right? And that's standing in the tunnel, getting ready to run out on the football field before a game. And it's this moment where you're crossing this threshold. You're going from this safe environment into this environment where you're laying it all out on the line. And so having that experience on the ground and then being able to kind of feel that same type of experience when you're up in space, it definitely helps. And so the training kicks in. And you get outside in that on your first spacewalk, and that can be a pretty emotional moment for you. It can be a little bit nerve-wracking, but you're also very excited, right? Because this is one of those events that you've dreamed about being able to go out and do. And then that's where the training kicks in. You get outside the hatch, and there's the handhold, just like when you've practiced in the NBL, in the neutral buoyancy lab, in the giant pool. You come out the hatch there, and there's that same handhold. And so then all of a sudden, it's just muscle memory, and you just start doing the job just like you did on the ground, just like when you run out on that football field, and you line up, and you're making your reads, and you're reacting to the play, and you've done it 10, 20, 30 times in practice. Now you're doing it for real, and that just makes it go that much smoother when it is the real day. It's just like the football team. We talk about the team, and we oftentimes think about the actual players, and it is so much more than that. It's the coaching staff, it's the training staff, it's the doctors, it's the folks that take care of the stadium. All of them make it happen, and it's the same thing here at JSC. We've got an incredible team from not only the trainers, but the folks that operate the facilities, the folks that, when we talk about the VR lab, they've created that, and they take a lot of pride in what they've done, and realizing that that they are contributing to human spaceflight. And so just across the board, it is, oftentimes it's the astronauts that, that you see. It's the astronauts that are oftentimes getting interviewed like this. But it's really the hundreds and thousands of people that are around you that make it happen. And we couldn't do our job without them.
Hi, my name is Soichi Noguchi from Japan. I am Mission Specialist 1 on Crew-1 mission to International Space Station. Well, my mission will be help support the commander and the pilot on spacecraft Crew-Dragon. And of course, once I arrive on the space station, I'll be a border engineer and do lots of science and maintenance and spacewalks, robotics, all kinds of work. Yeah, it's quite a difference. Demo 2 is obviously a successful flight, but this is a test flight. This is our first end-to-end test from launch, docking, to coming back. And of course, we are waiting for the safe return. But once after the return of the Demo 2, NASA will take a look at all the data along with the SpaceX, and then the NASA declares this is good vehicle to fly, maybe certification for the space flight. And after that, our mission comes. So the Crew-1 is the first operational space flight after the certification given by NASA. Well, it's a good question. Obviously, the NASA will check all the safety and all the system requirement, and NASA assures that this vehicle, the Crew-Dragon made by SpaceX, is fit for the space flight. And that basically opened the door for any kind of space flight, including just a tourist flight or the commercial aimed flight, not just for the professional flight like us. So this is a big step on the commercial space flight. Well, I'm really fortunate enough to have a good crew member. Hopper is our commander. He's a really natural leader. He's really thoughtful and caring, and really fortunate to have a great commander like him. Ike, I would say he's the best rookie ever. I don't know any other rookie astronaut who is really capable and knowledgeable and fun guy as well. Shannon Walker, we spent long time together. We're in the same age, and I really respect her on her knowledge. She's really an ISS guru. And for me, it's more like a running mate, because we mission specialist. I'm a mission specialist 1, and she's mission specialist 2, and together we can share the knowledge and kind of back up each other to accomplish big mission goals. So we are very happy to interact with each other. So 4 of us, the great team, and obviously we have a lot of different background, and the diversity definitely gives us a great rigidity to our crew. Right now, training is basically 2 parts. One is a lot of training as an ISS long expedition crew member, which involves science payloads, and also the maintenance task, and also some of the assembly tasks remain on the space station. The other half is, of course, the SpaceX. We learn to fly the new vehicle. Crew-Dragon vehicle, obviously the pretty successful launch on the Demo 2, and it shows it's definitely nicely designed, and it's very efficient way of doing business to going to the space station, and we really love it. Yeah, I was fortunate enough to fly 2 different vehicles so far, a space shuttle and Russian Soyuz. And this new SpaceX is obviously launched like a capsule. This is more like a Soyuz. And the docking sequences is quite resembling to the space shuttle. And landing is totally new. We're going to be splashing down into the ocean just like Apollo. So it's a little bit of a different flavor. It's a combination of all the space vehicle which mankind developed so far. So it's very exciting. The shuttle training here in Houston and the Soyuz training in Star City, Russia, obviously is a totally different approach. I personally like the way that NASA trained me on the first flight, but the Russian side, they train me from the scratch, start from the theoretical part to kind of build up to the operational skills. While the space shuttle, you learn through the simulation and learn from the other crew member. So it's a totally different approach, and SpaceX has its own way. But each different method eventually make us good astronaut who can operate the system safely, because ultimate goal is to return the vehicle with the same number of people go up and they come back safely. So it's all the same. Well, for the as a long duration crew member, you have to know not just the U.S. module, but all those each international partners modules: Russian module, Japanese module, European module, and of course the Canadian arm. So a lot of maintenance and also safety-related events are we have to know, and especially for the emergency type of scenario, the depressurization, fire, and toxic atmosphere, those kind of things you have to memorize, and you have to act as one team to counteract with the situation. And those type of emergency response training will take a lot of time, and that's a good team building opportunity as well.
How does this compare?
Well, I think having two different experiences so far definitely helps understanding the new system. And the space shuttle and Soyuz, obviously, it's a two totally different system, totally different designed spacecraft. And I kind of feel the similar approach for like launch and launch escape is somewhat similar to what the Soyuz guys doing. And rendezvous approach and the way they dock is, I feel, the same philosophy as the space shuttle. But the important thing is this is brand new, designed from scratch, 21st century spacecraft. So I have a knowledge of space shuttle and the Soyuz, but I don't want to stick to those old experience. We are learning a new system, and this is a new design. And obviously, the SpaceX did a very nice job designing the new spacecraft. I think this SpaceX training, obviously this is new, so I would say it's more like a half development support and half training. So unlike space shuttle program or Soyuz, which have a long history of a safe flight, and I kind of learned from the previous crew member. But this one, you have to kind of build the training template by yourselves. And half of the time I spend in Houston, California, is more like helping them develop the procedure. So it's a kind of new experience, but eventually this SpaceX Crew Dragon become a standard, and we will learn from their system, from their operating side. So I think eventually this will become a new standard. Well, I wanted to be an astronaut for a long time. High school days, I watched the shuttle launch, the STS-1, and I thought this is the time that a lot of people starting to fly to space and just continue to pursue that career. I studied aerodynamics and aerospace engineering. And I started working as an engineer that makes all the space component and also the aerodynamics research. And when I turned 30, Japanese Space Agency started recruiting another astronaut class. And I was fortunate enough to be selected as one out of 572 applicants and sent immediately to Johnson Space Center. And I joined the class of 1996. And that class obviously have a lot of people, 44 classmates, and a lot of interesting stories, but I'm in Houston since then. Well, I think the biggest thing is to be an astronaut is the motivation. You know, you have to be motivated, highly motivated, to become an astronaut. And you study physics, you study math, but you have to keep your aspiration to fly to space, and that's the main thing. Yes, I have my lovely wife and 3 daughters, and they are now in Japan. Of course, in this situation, COVID-19, they are not freely come to here, and I don't have much chance to go back to Japan, so that's kind of a separation. So that's one tough situation for me, but we'll be together, although we are physically separated. Yes, my kids are fortunate enough to attend my 2 previous launches. The first time on the space shuttle, they are elementary school, and they just enjoy traveling to Florida, aside from the rocket launch. And on my Soyuz launch, they are almost the teenagers, and they can understand all those anxiety and the feeling of the rush and the feeling of excitement. So it's second time is more memorable. Hopefully this time they're now grown up, but they're still very happy to come to see the dad launch. So it should be a nice family reunion. Yeah, it's actually those 3 flights are so far apart. The 2005, our main way of communication was is a fax actually, and then we just started to have some very limited email. On the second flight, however, we have internet on board. We can do the tweet, we can do the video conferencing, and now we have almost 24/7 email access plus video conferencing capability on their cell phone as well. So it's much closer in this digital age. So it should be a fun stay. Yeah, I think that's one good thing about the digital evolution. Obviously, as the technology evolves, it's much easier to communicate, and it's convenient for them as well. Before, I remember on my first flight, my family has to come to the Space Center to hear all those conversations. And second time, because it's Russia, there's somewhat limited. Now, everything you can stream it on their cell phone. And emails pretty much stress-free. So definitely the IT advances is doing a big favor for us for the family communication between space and Earth. Well, from the changes from space shuttle to SpaceX is big. I told my daughters that the changes is almost feel like the very old telephone booth to the smartphone. So back in the days, we have to dial the phone, and that's what they only do. And now we have all those capability in a very sleek design, and that's what SpaceX feel like. So in the space shuttle, there's almost 3,000 switches on the cockpit, and each switch do one thing, like opening the valves, turn on the lights. And the SpaceX it's only have 3 screens, touch screens, and you can do everything over there. So it's definitely a modern style, and it's a really efficient way of interacting with the system. So if you think about upgrading your old dial phone to the smartphone, you kind of feel the excitement of upgrading from Space Shuttle to SpaceX. Well, I would say challenging new task, challenging new missions just really stir me up, and I was really fortunate enough to try the third mission. First one, the Space Shuttle. Second one, the Soyuz. This time it's SpaceX. So it's really, I feel really fortunate that I have gotten given a chance to try third time to space travel. Yes, sir. I did 3 spacewalks back in 2005. Oh yeah, by all means, I'd be happy to open the hatch and go outside and have fun for 6 hours, and don't want to come back actually. Wow, spacewalk is fun, period. A lot of people ask me for the spacewalk, is it dangerous? Is there any risk? And yes, of course there's a risk involved. It's a high-risk environment and adrenaline rush type of activities. But we definitely enjoy it. Everything flows, but it's really slow. And the view is just magnificent. There's nothing between you and Earth and just open space. And we can definitely enjoy the view. And also all the tasks we train for many, many times on the ground, usually under the pool. So by the time you do the spacewalk, you know all the tasks by heart. So it's actually very enjoyable and it's very fun. And I'm really looking forward to go back and do the spacewalk. I would say for the space travel or the astronaut, cosmonaut in general, Alexei Leonov is my hero, and I was really, really fortunate to have a lot of interaction with him because of the Association of Space Explorers. That's a kind of a reunion of all the cosmonauts and astronauts around the world. And me being one of the youngest member from JAXA, and obviously the Alexei is the most prominent member. But we have a lot of interaction talking about those international friendship, international organization, and spacewalk. He did the spacewalk before I was born, but he gives me a lot of advice, and also he was eager enough to listen to my story of the latest space station days. So we have a lot of time in together, and I really appreciate that. This mission is all about international cooperation. My role in this flight is to accomplish safe return of the Crew-Dragon. Throughout my time on board space station, I'll dedicate my time to the advancement of the science. Together, we will overcome all the obstacles. All for one, Crew-1 for all. Well, the important thing for us is, of course, to keep the dream alive. And for this commercial space program is obviously Launch America. This commercial program is by the Americans, for the Americans, of the Americans. So Americans really should be proud of this achievement. But for the rest of the 7.4 billion people, I will open the door for you. The spacecraft of this century is not just for America, but this is an international corporation, and all the other people around the world have a chance to ride on this Crew-Dragon. So this is a new era. I totally agree. This Launch America is a great achievement for the American company, and of course NASA played a big role, but this achievement benefits the whole world because International Space Station itself is an international program, and there are a lot of companies are looking forward to be the second or third SpaceX, meaning any country around the world now have a chance at least to give it a try. They can have their own vehicle certified by NASA and then bring people to space station or beyond. So this definitely a new era, open up a new capability and possibility. Obviously, the launch day is different from the day before. That you wake up and you try to feel like normal, but obviously you know you're going to space that day. And all the sequence from medical checkup, suit up, walk out to the pad, and arriving at the pad and getting into the capsule. Everything is different. Although we do lots of dress rehearsal type of training, the launch day is different, and I'm really looking forward to go back to that launch day. I think my memory on the launch day on the space shuttle, especially the first space shuttle, is really vivid. You know, we'll visit the launch pad many times and see a lot of people, a lot of technicians working around the vehicle. But on the launch day, it's only you and the support closeout crew, and all the rest of the people is outside those 3-mile perimeter. So there's nobody around the launch pad. And the vehicle is definitely like living creature. All the pipes, all the pipelines are alive, and there's a fueling going on. So I really remember the morning of the launch day, arrive at the pad. Hey, this vehicle is alive and waiting to go up. So I kind of expect the same kind of excitement on the launch day to the 39A with the Crew Dragon. Well, many people say, especially the returning crew, they feel like they never missed a date on space station, meaning on the day one of the returning flight, they feel like they were on the station yesterday as well, meaning you quickly go back to the old habits of going back to the zero gravity life and start from there. So my second flight, first flight was on the shuttle, and then the second flight was Soyuz, so it's totally different launch experience. But by the time I opened the hatch of the space station, I feel like I was living here for long times. My first flight was 2005. That was on the space shuttle, Discovery, STS-114. And that was 2 weeks flight. And we have 5-year training for the next flight. And my flight was 2009, end of 2009. That was on the Russian Soyuz and was launched from Baikonur. So it's roughly 5 years between those flights. My Soyuz flight lasts about 5.5 months. I launched the day before Christmas, and I come back a few days before a few days after June. So yeah, roughly 6 months.
Fantastic. And able to get that installed, or?
Yeah, during my stay, we have a space shuttle, STS-130, came up and then installed the cupola. That was quite a game changer. Before that, we have a smaller window, and everybody's kind of cram in and fight for the view. And now we have a big window and sub-windows, and a lot of astronauts just glued to the window and take photos and videos and do the video conference with the family. So that was quickly changed our quality of space station life. One of the fun moments is on my first flight, I flew with Steve Robinson. He was EVA together, so it's a good friends on the space shuttle. And he comes to the space station with the cupola. So we opened the window, and then he picked up the guitar and he played a song for us. So that's a great moment that we have enjoyed the time together.